I think we've already explained our position. Look, I'm just looking forward to his next fight, but ultimately, whether we've been warranted, and I've said we've been warranted, he's completely out of contract. He's not breached any contractual obligation at all, and unless they come to an understanding that he has or he hasn't, that's the point of call. That's what they need to come together on. I think, as I said, we've explained our position. We've done everything that we feel that we could have done and waited as long as we could have done. But ultimately, Lawrence has warranted, believes 100%. Otherwise, I'm sure he would have settled by now that he has not broken any contract or any contractual obligation. And we have to take his word, his lawyer's word, in writing, legally indemnified, to the point where, it doesn't seem like he's broken any contract.
Hello and welcome back to the number one podcast in the sport, where I thought we'd squeeze one more in for 2025. Whew, what a year it's been, and what a way to close out the year, actually. But I wanted to, and I realized I hadn't really talked about it, I wanted to talk about the last few shows we've had. So, like, obviously the Queensberry and Matchroom African Adventures, as well as Ben Shalom and Boxer. I like to be comprehensive in the things that I talk about. So I'm going to just start with this, right? I had a whole issue with this concept of we're taking boxing back to Africa, which wasn't true, okay? What was happening was we need to get these guys out because we got contracts with them. We don't want to pay. So if someone else will pay to have Craig or Dan or whoever, brilliant. It's not on my balance sheet. I'll attach my name to it, and it's a good jolly up for the crew, okay? We'll come back to what a jolly up in Africa is later on, but that's what it was. When this was announced at the time, I said, this just feels like boxing imperialism. Yeah? Because that's not how you grow sport. If you think about where the social climate is in Britain right now, there is an idea that, put Brits first. We don't want people coming in from elsewhere to do stuff that we can do ourselves. That's the social climate right now, right? There's no disputing that. That's why guys like Ant Middleton and Tommy Robinson are flourishing. And it's not just them, there are loads. And there's a similar feeling in Africa too, right? There's a consensus in Africa of we can make content here. We can film stuff here. We can commentate. Like, we don't need outsiders coming in. So Matchroom weren't needed, because they didn't put any money into this, by the way. This is fully funded by the Prince's son, or the Prime Minister's son in Ghana, whoever it is. That's what it's funded by. So none of this sits on Matchroom's budget. If it did, do you really think the imagery would look the way it did? No, it wouldn't. So the Aziz Richards thing was KD, the supposed marketing genius, literally selling out his own nation for his own advancement. Because, like, if you saw, there was no native Ghanaian participation in the non-combat part of it. Like, the two main fighters that they were really leveraging were a Nigerian and a Jamaican. Even on the undercard, they had Freezy, but Freezy made his name in the UK. And look, I know he's Ghanaian and respect him for doing that, but the reality of it is this: that wasn't designed to showcase Ghanaian boxing. I don't see much shoulder content around boxing in Ghana. I didn't see enough emphasis on guys like Azuma Nelson, Ike Quarty, etc. It was literally Matchroom going, we don't have to pay Craig. Oh, Craig, you want to fight Dan? Cool, we'll get someone else to pay for it. Right? Another example of exploiting dumb Africans, which I'm very uncomfortable with. And so I personally couldn't have signed up to that. I'm just telling you now, I couldn't have signed up to that conceptually. Now, if it was a Ghana show from the ground up, I'd watch in support and solidarity. In the same way that over here, I don't want my commentary team consisting of, I don't know, Triple G, who I don't care. Like, we've got enough good Brits here. We've got Calzaghe, we've got Clinton Woods, men that deserve a voice, in the commentary booth. We already have enough people like Frotch, etc. We've got people here. Well, we don't want outsiders here. Do you know what I mean? And I felt really, really uncomfortable just conceptually with all of it. I always felt uncomfortable with it. That's why I don't really make much of a play on it. I feel if they're just going to pay you 50 grand to fight, like, if that's what your principles are worth, I get it. People are different. I couldn't have done that. That's what I'm saying, is that I could not have done that. So let me summarize how I felt about the Ghana card. I felt like KD, the marketing genius, the marketing guru, yeah, guy that's brought no big ticket deals to anyone. And I promise you, I've had so many screen grabs of texts that KD has sent to fighters promising them stuff, and none of it has materialized. Okay? If this guy wasn't connected to Anthony Joshua, he'd be managing a Morley's. Yeah, he'd be managing a Morley's somewhere on the Uxbridge Road. That's what he'd be doing. And he'd be telling people, I used to be a marketing genius once. Yeah, he's lived off the AJ name while consistently failing to deliver and being nothing more than a yapping Malinois in all intents and purposes. So I imagine what he did is he went to Ghana and he went to the Prime Minister's son, President's son, and he said, listen, we're going to do a show in December. Yeah, we're going to get some British boxers and black British boxers on, and then we're going to have stack the undercard with loads of boxers that Brits don't know, right? And then we're going to do all of this on DAZN, which your people are going to have to pay for out of their meager earnings to watch. But here's the beautiful thing. We're going to bring AJ. AJ is going to be in Ghana for all of the fight week doing stuff, right? And I imagine when they did the deal, that's probably the plan, okay? So guys like, listen, there you go. There's £1 million. Sort it. AJ gets the Jake Paul gig. Phone call goes, yo, KD, marketing genius, marketing savant. What's going on here? And KD's like, wow, these things happen in boxing, but we still got to carry on with the show because I've spent the money. And then, at this point, Ghana's lost interest. Like, let's just get through this garbage and move on. And so what you ended up with on that Saturday night was a show that no one really cared about. Brits didn't really care because Richards versus Aziz should have been like a chief support on a meaningful UK card. I still think that fight was two hard men going at it, and that will always work. Yeah, for British audience, that will always work. Whether you think they're world level or not is irrelevant. Those two fighting will always be compelling one way or the other because they both love to fight. And too often, we're either being fed people that don't like to fight or people who aren't physically equipped to fight. Those two built for both of them. So putting it in Ghana, it just felt like a slap in the face for British fans. Basically, the message was, Matchroom basically saying, look, we're not going to give the fans what they want. Do you know what I mean? You're telling me, hold on a second, let me just take a step back. You're telling me Ben Shalom for 50 grand a piece on those two could not have put that on the BBC. Like, you really want to make a statement on the BBC, you just say to Matchroom, look, we'll take Craig and Dan. We'll put this money up for them. Now, whether Matchroom would play ball, I don't know. Like, they strike me as being incredibly slippery characters and rather, how do you describe it? Rather emotional in how they do business, particularly with people like Ben. So anyway, you've got this, what I call it a dud of a show. Outdoor arena, yeah, they do the fireworks and stuff. But did you see the videography? This is where I need Parker's input, because that videography looked like, remember the white collar shows from like 2012? Yeah. And you just had like the janky Sony Digicam, wherever the camera was back then, right? And someone's just filming it. And that became the official fight content. Or like I used to do back in the day, just filming off a Panasonic Lumix. Do you know what I mean? A mirrorless camera. That's what it looked like. It looked really, as Simon Jordan would say, it looked low rent. It looked low rent. It looked poor. The build-up looked corny. Like Frank Smith, of all people, in a Ghana shirt. Why? Like, if ever you wanted to anchor how imperialistic this felt to, and I'm only speaking for me right now, as someone that grew up in Africa, how imperialistic it felt to have this third-rate English dude. And he is a third-rate man because this guy can't fight. He got bullied by Eddie Hearn. We saw the body sparring. To have him stood there in a Ghana shirt representing what exactly? See, when people phone, right, and they're meant to be on holiday, there's nothing more annoying than that. Like, that's why I had to just ditch that call. So, here's the thing. When you've got a third-rate Englishman in another country wearing the shirt, like, this is the only way I can say I'm part of you. Like, mate, just put the colonial suit on. Yeah, just put the colonial suit on and crack on, right? Just crack on and say, we're just here to take the money. Like we used to be here to take the cocoa. Like we used to be here to take the gold. That is all we're here for. We are not here to grow Ghanaian boxing. There will be no match from Ghana. This is just KD's flight of fancy, and he's AJ's mate, so we've kind of had to do this. I don't want to be here 5 days before Christmas larking around. It's too hot for me. I'd rather be at home working out how the hell I'm with the Eubank while hating the Eubanks. All that sort of stuff, right? That is Frank Smith. Then they wheel out the rest of the numbnuts, Adam Smith, Darren Barker, etc. Just, do you see what I mean? It's almost like we don't trust the natives. We have to put our people in position. We don't trust the natives. But you need someone from Ghana. Shit, you're right. Like, look on socials. What British people are out here? Yo, where's Sam Antwi? Oh no, he's not here. Oh, Denzel's here. Where's Denzel from? Wikipedia. Denzel. Oh, he's Ghanaian. Oh, get him on comms. Now, as I've said many times before, I think Denzel is a natural in the media. I think once he nails his communication style down, just slows it down a bit, he'll be a great pundit because he sees it. But they just kind of wheel Denzel out and go, right, box ticked, right? But you still got numbnuts Adam Smith, numbnuts Darren Barker on there for no real reason, by the way. Like, everyone finds him jarring. You got Diamante, you got all these people. I'm like, so where is the elevation of Ghanaian boxing? And just let me restate this again. If a load of boxers came from the Middle East to the UK to have a show, I would be kicking off just as bad because I'd be like, we've got enough here. Yeah? We've got enough here. And that irritates me when, oh, you just say, no. I would feel the same about British boxing. I'm like, we don't want too many Americans. We're going to come on to an American and you thought you were going to catch me up. We're going to come on to that in a sec. So anyway, you get this show, and the show is basically like 3 levels below UK small hall, right? Up until the main event. The main event was compelling, it was good. But the visuals were so bad you couldn't really watch it. Like, we're so used to 4K, full luminosity, proper lighting, that you're watching this going, this feels like a white collar show, and that wasn't the way to showcase Dan versus Craig. So overall, this is an absolute shit show in my opinion, and I'm sure KD will come up with a graph that goes upwards for some reason, and he'll tell us, well, you know, we went from 1 impression to 100 impressions. That shows growth over the course of the fight and all that sort of nonsense. You know, the saying that marketing geniuses love to talk about. But you're a guy that's delivered nothing in your marketing career. I guess even losses are wins, right? Let me just come back to that phone call. Why do people phone? Like, you know, like they don't want to take annual leave between Christmas and New Year, right? They're like, I'm working. Then they want to phone you and it's like, but you ain't got no bread for me. You ain't got no bread for me. You ain't got no opportunity. What are you phoning me for? I'm just going to phone for a chat, man. It's my time off. Don't do that. I mean, if you're in that kind of industry, don't phone people unless you got bread for them between Christmas and New Year. We're all trying to relax and talk about KD, the marketing genius. So let's just talk about the fight. If you followed me from my New Age days, Craig and Dan are 2 people that have kind of helped. We've all kind of risen together. And I genuinely believe when that generation retires, that's probably when I'll stop doing the podcast. Because I will never know a generation of boxers that well and in that much depth ever again. As boxers and as men. I probably won't because I'm older now. And in the role now, I just see young kids coming through. So I have a different perspective, and I don't think that perspective is as entertaining. So I'll probably run my course with these guys and then step down and let the new generation take over. Like guys like Gunman Boxing. I never know, what's his real name? But I think he's really good. Like he's like he said himself, he's the new voice. He's where the things are going now. Now, I was the podcast era. He's now the live in front of the camera. You know, he's the face of the new generation. So maybe it's time for him to take the mantle and take it to another level. But back to what we were saying. I've watched Dan go backwards from when he was European champion. And it hurts me because, like, Dan's better than he shows. Right? He is. Like, when you look at Dan's constituent parts, they actually make for a really good fighter. He's a guy that's got incredibly long limbs, can generate power off very little leverage, by the way. So he's never actually maximized his leverage. And if he did, whew, you know what I mean? He would have been deadly. So Dan's never done that. But what's happened, probably since that European title win, is he's listened to too many different people who don't understand Dan Aziz. Who don't understand Dan, that don't know what's underneath the bonnet. Okay? And so if you notice with Dan can never box small. He can't. So when Dan's giving up height to people, he doesn't box small. If you don't know what you're looking for, it looks like he does because you'll see him bobbing, weaving and stuff. But you've never seen Dan punch high while his head's low. It's rare. Definitely since he's won his European title, he hasn't. He's always had to get back up to a zero position where he's just stood upright and then he works from there. And so what ends up happening is if you watch when Dan punches, his legs are pretty much locked. So there's no bounce in the shots and there's no flow in them. And what that means is he's getting timed when he gets to the top of his rise and then he's getting caught. Or he's getting caught on his way down because he's not throwing anything. You kind of know with Dan, if you see Dan dropping his head, no punches are going to come. So you can actually attack him. That's where you go, right, I can time my attacks for when he comes up because there's no danger when he's down. And I've watched this and I've said this to Dan. I was like, Dan, you got to learn to box small. I know, too. I know. But, you know, who knows? He's his own man, and I have to respect the decisions he takes. But I was watching this fight going, at some point, Craig's going to figure out that you just got to hit Dan in the top position. When Dan's in his zero position, just leave a couple of shots for when he arrives in that position, because it's going to take him a tenth of a second to set before he throws his punch. And Craig kind of figured that out as the fight progressed. If Dan was able to fight from a low position and put some bounce in his shots, he'd be an absolute menace because you wouldn't know when the attacks were coming. But because his attacks are really predictable now, it's very, very hard for him to put any kind of disguise into his shots. And he's getting caught now. And this happened in the Buatsi fight. He's getting caught upright. So his legs are locked. So he can't actually absorb the shot because he's got tension in the legs. So the force just bounces out and bounces back into him. And then that's him. And it's those little things like people say you hammer the peacock. I just don't believe you're going to learn that in the peacock because no one's ever done that in the peacock. As much as I love Larry, Larry's also not a guy that has had to coach that. Do you know what I mean? Like there are other people who have done. I've had to do it before. Or I've had to teach guys to be able to throw shots when the head's low. Do you know what I mean? Because then that head dropping could mean a shot. It could mean nothing. Now you're like, oh, I'm hesitant now. But Craig was never hesitant in that fight. And that fight made Craig look like a brand new fighter. Because the second half of that fight, when Craig stepped up his work rate, and you can see, I mean, Craig's got that fitness. Now that he's back with Tony, he's working with people who pride themselves on that fitness and work rate, which I don't think he had in the Willie Hutchinson fight. And there could be all sorts of reasons for that. But as I've said, Craig's a guy who's normally quite robust when it comes to his chin, and he'll do the 12. And so the problem you will always have with Craig is if he hits you, he's going to hurt you. And I know people say, yeah, but I'm telling you now, Craig Richards hits harder than most light heavyweights. And he doesn't get the credit for it because it doesn't look like he's doing anything because he's so relaxed when he does it. But I think there's life in both guys. I know Craig won and, that the knockout was rough to watch because Dan got caught in a position where his legs were locked pretty much, and they were so close together, he could never have taken that shot. And I'm like, where did you learn that? Did Karen teach you that? No, I'm joking. But where did you learn that? And the last 4 rounds of that fight reminded me of the tail end of Dan's amateur career, where he was just overthinking and he was trying to be too good and trying to be too perfect. And he doesn't need to be that. He just needs to go back to basics and go, look, I'm a guy that likes to come in off the crouch, bent arm shots a lot, big right hands over the top if I can, but I've got to be able to disguise that. I've got to be cute in how I do that. You can touch up on some punch mechanics so his punches aren't going towards the sky. There's little things you could tweak relatively quickly, but then I stop and go, but he had Buddy McGirt with him. Why wasn't Buddy McGirt fixing all of this? I know Brian O'Shaughnessy would have fixed all of that. Why wasn't Buddy McGirt doing that? And that's spending a lot of money doing that. Dan could have just easily rung me. Like, phone calls free. You get 3 minutes. You could have said, right, what am I not doing right? No, here's three things to work on. I'll make you a monster. Done. Do I have time to coach someone full time? No, but Dan could have easily rung me up and said, yo, man, let's do some work. Never did, which is fine. But that's the nature of it. The reality is, Dan and I go back a long way. Craig and I go back a long way. We're talking 12, 13 years now. Do you know what I mean? And in a few years' time, we're all going to be out the game. We're all going to be at shows, sat together, reminiscing. And that's the bit I'm looking forward to. That's the bit I'm looking forward to. Just us being, I don't want to say friends again, because we'll always be friends, I like to think. But us being close again, where we can do stuff without professional boxing getting in the way. I'm looking forward to that time. Dan, Craig, because remember, that's my generation of guys. Dan, Craig, Andre Sterling, Whack Matthew Tinker in there. Then Ashley Vancey type guys, etc. The list goes on. That generation is they're the ones who will always be the most relevant to me. And I'm looking forward to that time. But there's still life in these old dogs yet. I still think there's something in Dan. Like, if he can just make a few tweaks, he can have an Indian summer to his career where he just wipes out some of these British fighters. I think Dan Aziz can do a number on Willie Hutchinson with the right camp and the right people. And I'm not saying change trainers before anyone says anything, but you need the right ideas. And Dan's got to manage his own career now. I'm not saying change trainers. I'm saying Dan Aziz needs to be going in there going, I need to be doing these things to this standard. Let's focus on that, nothing else. It's his career. Said the same thing to Denzel. You've got to know what you need to work on, and then you've got to get your team to find solutions to deliver that. If you're not, what are you paying them 10% for? Especially now that these guys are veterans. So I think there's mileage in Dan. I think Dan can beat most Brits. I think Dan could give Boatsy a hard fight with the right training camp. I genuinely do. You've just got to get in Dan's mind a bit more and get him in that position. So there's miles left in Dan, I still believe. But he can't take too many more stoppages like that, because that's taking years off. I stand on this. Take Beterbiev and Bivol off the table, maybe Benavides too. Spider's competitive with those guys like Gavodchik, etc., etc., etc. Craig is still a guy you can pay 6 figures to as a chief support, and he's going to deliver for you. But no one is brave enough to put him in those challenging environments. Put him in. In fact, put him in with Beterbiev. Why not? Why not? I don't know if Craig would win. Beterbiev's 40. The odds kind of balance out a little bit more, but Beterbiev will still be the favorite. But I'd like to see that. I'd like to see Craig versus Yard. Why? These fights should just happen as a matter of course. Like, let's stop faffing about, talking about Saudi money, titles, etc. Make the damn fight. That is it. That's what I would say on that one. But to summarize the Ghana show, low rent, felt like colonialism. To me, that's not how you grow boxing in a location. Just my take on it. And can someone just take the reins away from KD, please? So the day after, like, the DAZN bunch of merry men go from Ghana to Nigeria, right? And then we have the same problem. Now, I know he scrubbed his name off of this, but do you remember this was an Amir Khan promotion, wasn't it? Okoli versus Tete was an Amir Khan promotion. Like I said, colonialism doesn't make sense to me. Like, why are people signing off on this? People who are proudly Nigerian, they post all this stuff about Nigerian Independence Day, this, that, and the third. And, it seems that people are conveniently Nigerian, because I'm like, well, one of the principles of Nigeria is, we've got 300 million people. We've got enough wealth here. We can do it ourselves. Who needs Amir Khan? Do you know what I mean? Who needs Amir Khan? Do the show in Pakistan. And that worries me. It worries me that people are literally just seeing Africa as a place you can go and fleece people. Or we'll put on a show here, give us all of this money. And then you're underpaying the fighters. So this is really about that. Like, the money's not staying in the country. And I feel the same way if it was happening in this country. I've never liked the idea that the UK is for sale. But we don't own our own utilities, for example, right? We don't own our own utilities. We don't own a lot of our own infrastructure. Yeah, and when we go nuclear, which we will do when it comes to energy, we're probably not going to own that. Remember, we're trying to do the deal with EDF, and then EDF were like, we don't like the strike price. And even then, as a country, we didn't say we're going to build it ourselves. But we're giving money to other countries to fight wars. So before anyone says, oh, this is anti-anything, it's not. I'm a big believer in countries doing for themselves, whatever the country is, right? I'm a big believer in that. So you have this show, and this show makes no sense. Do you remember when, they were talking about it, and you had all, like I told you, it just looked like a slave auction on that Queensbury show. You had Lawrence there, Daniel Dubois, Adelaide, the list went on, Moses Atalma, and they were like, we're going to put all of these guys on a Nigeria show. And I just said, ain't no one putting up that kind of money. And so it proved, because we got Lawrence Okoli, who just needs rounds, a heavyweight, which is fair enough. Maybe not those kinds of rounds. I think Ika Beabuchi would have given him better rounds. But we also had Tony Yoka on his kind of either road to redemption or road to perdition, whichever one he wants to go on. We had Yoka on there as well. Now, I don't know if that's teeing up for a fight between those two. I don't know. No one's looking to spend any money in 2026, so I wouldn't bank on that. But here's how bad these two cards are. No one's updated BoxRec. Meant to be a Matchroom show, meant to be a Queensbury show. You're telling me those promoters don't have people in their teams that update BoxRec. You've still got the orange box with the question mark over both of those cards. That is embarrassing. That lets you know that they cut and run. They cut and run. That's the issue I have. They just came and got the money. Once they had the money, they didn't care. Story of Africa. People come, take what they want, leave the shit for everyone else to deal with. But you didn't come on here for politics. So, Yoka looks okay in his fight. Yeah, okay. Yoka did his thing. But what's they've left for Yoka now, apart from Joe Joyce? Do you see what I mean? There isn't really much out there for Yoka. You could put Yoka in with like a Fraser Clark, but I think Yoka's beyond that level. Yoka versus TKV for a European? Be a firm test. You definitely test how bad Yoka wants to box. But imagine if you're Tony Yoka, you're like, I would quite like to fight someone that's going to make me millions. And I don't know who that is. But look, he's got solid management behind him. Smart guys are behind Tony Yoka. They'll know what to do next. So leave that in their capable hands. As for Lawrence did what Lawrence does. I think if in 2026 Lawrence doesn't get a big fight, then we know the experiment's done. And I love Lawrence. I want Lawrence to do really well. But there's only so much dithering you can do at heavyweight. Do you put Lawrence in with Joe Parker and say, right, one of you two is going to move up, one of you isn't? But I think that would be fair. Do you put him in with a Talma? That feels like that doesn't need to happen yet, because let both guys make money at some point. They can meet each other. I don't know. I genuinely don't know. We had two cards in Africa that basically told us absolutely nothing, but someone paid for them, which meant the promoters didn't have to, right? That's one less fight they've had to pay. And that's what you're going to see happen from now on. It's becoming like the football model, isn't it? Chelsea got a load of players here that I'm paying a gang of cash to. Let me loan them out. If they do well, awesome, problem solved. If they don't do well, I haven't had to pay for them. I can just move them on. This is what you're seeing in boxing now. If you're Frank, if you're Eddie, whoever, you're like, I want those Saudi gigs. Above all else, I want the Saudi gigs. And if I don't get the Saudi gigs, there isn't really much I can do here unless we get like a Tyson Fury comeback. There's not much. Like, who's headlining in the UK that's going to do arenas? Ben Eubank did it, but that's about it. Who else is doing numbers? And the thing is, the Saudi money's inflated purses to the point where no one's going to fight for pennies anymore. Boxers have to get used to fighting for 50, 60 grand again. If you're Fabio Wardley, you're going to have to get used to fighting for sub 500k again. There just isn't the money in the game. But there's a lot of greed. So people say, oh no, just wait for Turkey. And you'll be sat on the shelf. That's the reality. I think in 2026, the fighters that make the most progress are the guys who invest in themselves. Listen, I don't care where you got to get the bread from. If you got to hustle. Put the money in. I'd get 16 grand as quick as I could. And I'd say to someone like Alfie or Steve Goodwin, here's some money. Get me 4 opponents. I want to fight in February. I want to fight in April. I want to fight in June. I want to fight in September. Yeah? Here's the money for those opponents. And then I'll sell tickets on top of that. That's what I would do. And I'd have my 2026 set, and I'd say, what opponents can I get? And okay, fine. So I need to top up an extra 3 or 4K over those 4 fights. Awesome. Done. I would have my plan that way if I really believed in myself. And then when it comes time to fight for titles, I'm in the picture. If you keep waiting with your hand out, hoping someone's going to give you a call, it ain't going to happen. There are too many people waiting. There are too many people parked up. So you've just got to take the initiative and go, right, I'm going to gamble. I'm going to gamble on me. Not enough guys are doing that right now. But everyone's just waiting, I'm going to wait for the phone to ring. You can't wait for the phone to ring. Like, when's the last time we saw Denzel? Exactly. And like I keep saying, he's a guy that when boxing was like, how are we going to get through this pandemic? He delivered. Every time Denzel's delivered. But where is he? When's he out next? Why isn't he out? It's a problem. Now, I think 2026 is looking grim. I think it's just looking grim, isn't it? Like, really, really grim. Because I can't tell you where we're going next. The only fight I'm looking forward to is Usyk versus Wilder. And that's really just so we close the account on that era. And now we're like, okay, that era's done. Usyk's proved himself. We move on. Or Wilder does something and upsets the apple cart. And all of a sudden we're like, oh, it's all open again. Do you see what I mean? That fight's so pivotal because if Usyk wins, the chapter closes. If Wilder wins, the chapter reopens. Because then we're talking about all those fights that need to happen with Wilder. Even a rematch with Usyk. And you're like, okay, life in the old dogs yet. But apart from that, what are we really looking forward to? So let's talk about the Boxer show at the First Direct Arena. So first and foremost, I have no idea what the First Direct Arena holds. But I bet it's a fair few thousand. I can guarantee they didn't sell that out. So why do it there? I don't really get that. If you're going to undersell an arena, you may as well just pick the most prestigious arena you can, like Co-op Live or whatever. But then I don't know what was available. So there may have been constraints. But there were other questions ahead of this show where you're like, what the hell's going on? If you're on the BBC, remember this is publicly funded. So we might have to ask some questions. Why were we going out to get Blair Cobbs to fight Elliot Whale? Can you think of just how ridiculous that fight sounds, right? Elliot Whale, really talented kid in the UK. I thought was a really good amateur who was just unlucky. But Elliot Whale is a guy who still needs to prove himself at domestic level, okay? And Blair Cobbs, no one really knows about, nor particularly cares about. So let me give you an insight into the BS that surrounds boxing on this, right? Let's take someone like Blair Cobbs. If I remember properly, Blair's from like Philadelphia, right? And I don't know if he's the most talented of kids, but he came up rough. I know this from talking to Greg. He came up rough, so he's had to prove himself in terms of toughness. He's been in with guys like Broner, Maurice Hooker. So he's been in with top tier guys and won. Elliot Well hasn't fought Echo Esserman. Elliot Well hasn't fought O'Hara Davis. Elliot Well hasn't fought a guy like Joe Codua. Like, Elliot Well's not proven at English level. Let me say that again. Elliot Well is not proven at English level. So why was Blair Cobbs brought over to fight Elliot Well? Is it simply that he's Eubank's mate and you're doing a favor for Eubank Jr. and you're basically going to feed Elliot Well to Blair Cobbs? Like Ted Cheeseman was allegedly fed to Carson Jones, right? And who else was also fed to Carson Jones? Was it Billy Long? It was one of those guys allegedly fed to Carson Jones. Were you feeding Elliot Well to Blair Cobbs? That's the truth I want to come out, because that doesn't make that's terrible matchmaking. That is the dumbest matchmaking I could think of. It is stupid matchmaking, unless your goal was, right, we're going to bring this American guy over as a favor for Eubank, and he's going to go and fight Elliot Well. And if Elliot loses, he can go back to fighting on TM shows in the middle of nowhere, which is a shame because we're not investing in British again. Here, once again, we're bringing an American in to feed off a Brit. I don't agree with that. I think that is wrong. Like, you can't afford Blair Cobbs on the BBC. You cannot be paying an American fighter to be the A-side on the BBC. This is just stupid. The optics of that are terrible. What meetings happen at Boxer where these things are considered good ideas? Now you've paid this Blair Cobbs guy his hotel, his business class flight, business class with his people to come over here and then go, I don't fancy it. It's a bit cold. I'm going back to Vegas. And then you've just got to put Elliot in with God knows who. They could have just done Elliot Well versus O'Hara Davis. Beefed up that card. Sold more tickets for sure. No one at Boxers seems to have a clue. And I'm not saying this to take shots at Ben. I don't think this is Ben's job at this point. Ben's job is to tell us where the company's going. Okay? Ben's job is to sign fighters. Ben's job is to announce shows. Ben's job is to secure broadcast deals. That's all I'm going to hold him accountable for. Maybe the look and feel. Matchmaking? No. Like everything about Boxers matchmaking has been worrying for a while. Yeah, the Elliot Well thing was a worry. Troy Williamson versus Callum Simpson, bigger worry. And those are the rumors coming out where essentially the argument has been, these are the allegations I'm hearing. I don't know if these are true or not. Ben Shalom is saying Sky got to his matchmaker and had the matchmaker do things to make Boxer look bad. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know if that's true. That'd be a crazy allegation if so, because Boxer's matchmaker Kev, I've always thought to be an upstanding guy. That's what I've thought in the contact I've had with him. So I don't know if he would do that. Would he do that? I don't know. But I look at the matchmaking, I'm like, this doesn't make any sense to me. All you have left is Callum Simpson. Why are you going to put him in with Troy Williamson? Why would you do that? So here's the issue I have with all of this. Callum Simpson was never a blue chip amateur. Nor was he a guy that was tough but unlucky. Generally, they're the two guys that go through. When you watch the amateurs, it's the kids who are really talented or the kids who are really tough that go through and have a career in the pros. Because the really talented ones don't have to show their toughness until later on, but the tough ones show their toughness up front, so you know you can build on that. Cam Simpson was neither. Just a middling kid, a kid who liked to box. He turned over. Go and look at his career. Hobson, Steffi Ball, Ryan Rose. He hopped around promoters, Steve Wood. He hopped around promoters because people would look at him and go, I'm not sure about him. Okay? I am not sure about him. He doesn't give me the feel. Remember, these are very experienced boxing people. Like, Dennis will tell you if a kid's got it, like, within a round. He'll know, right? Because he's been around it long enough. Dennis will know. And Callum Simpson was just on those shows. I think it was like pandemic times. He is on those shows, flat to deceive. Nothing there where you're like, put money into this kid. Here comes Ben. I don't know if he had his trousers pulled down again. I don't know. But here comes Ben with a check. I'm going to sign this Callum Simpson kid and he's going to be a world champion. No one believed that. I never believed that. My big surprise was that Zach Chelly didn't deal with him. I genuinely think if Zach was in a different situation, let's say Zach trained in Spain on his own and he had his coach with him and he just bought into what his coach wanted, I think Zach would have been a monster. I think Zach should have won that fight. But there were things behind the scenes that influenced that, which is a shame because that should have been a nice win for Zach, which would have propelled his career onwards and upwards. And then he fought that Zuko guy who, let's be honest, wasn't very good. And that Zuko guy had him down 2 or 3 times. And at that point, you're like, this Callum Simpson guy's hollow, man. He's hollow. Don't try and blind me with all these things about how caring he is for his family. I don't care. Can you fight or not? Or as they say in Yorkshire, can you fate? I don't know, right? That's me. I don't have a clue. Don't know. I was just never convinced. Now, Troy Williamson, on the other hand, always been convinced by. Talent-wise. I just feel that when you stay in the Northeast like he did, you just don't grow. But the talent was always there. The toughness was always there. He's a hard man. And he's been through it. This is a veteran. This is the guy that has no doubts about what he is capable of. And he's good. And everyone assumed, he's coming from light middle to super middle. He'll struggle. It was like, well, we didn't know what it was taken out of him to make 154. But at 168, he's not losing the micronutrients. He's not losing the carnitine, the choline, the magnesium, the sodium, the potassium. At 168, he's optimized. And you saw what happened to Callum Simpson. And I don't want to hear no talk about Callum Simpson. I was drained at the weight. I don't want to hear that. Because you were boxing at light heavy before you came on Boxer. You were boxing at light heavyweight. Why did you leave light heavy to come down? So you can't make those excuses now. But this has been coming for a while. And see, Ben Shalom doesn't listen. I don't know who Ben's got around him, but he's got the wrong people around him. Because he would have known right from the jump, Callum Simpson is not someone you hitch your business to. He just hasn't got that toughness. If you go back to when they signed Callum, if you had a choice between Callum and Troy Williamson, you'd have gone with Troy Williamson. Maybe more miles on the clock, but more of a guarantee. Now here you are. You got Callum Simpson. Who are you going to rebuild him against? Now Callum Simpson's going to be fighting them. He'll fight Jermaine Brown. And I don't even know if he'll beat Jermaine Brown. Because Jermaine Brown's now in that Callum Simpson territory of a guy who's been through a lot. Do you know what I mean? So he'll have a point to prove. So I don't even know. There's no easy routes back for Callum Simpson. And even if there are, no one cares now. You see what I mean? That's another name. With Fraser Clark, that's one name off. Callum Simpson, another name off. Who's next? Now you've got Adam Zim against the guy that fought Richardson Hitchens. Leman? I can't remember his name. And that's going to be at the Copper Box. How are you going to sell that out? 7,500. How are you going to sell that out? How? Adam Zim's from Slough. I don't even know what time the Elizabeth line stops running, but I can guarantee it stops running in time for people to be like, yeah, I can't get back to Slough. So how are you going to sell all those tickets? Do you even know? You even got a plan for that? I don't know. It's not looking good for Boxer, but Ben says he's got some announcements to make. I can't think of what they are because the mainline promoters are struggling. So unless he's found some gold somewhere, and it better not be Blair Cobbs. Please don't have it be Blair Cobbs, because that'd be another example of having your trousers pulled down. Billy Joe pulled them down, paying 1.25 mil for Boissy, pulled down. The money you paid for Coley just to let him leave again, pulled down. Why not just get Dan back? Just ring Dan and say, we messed up. Let's try again. Ring Dan Aziz and say, let's try again. You want entertainment on the BBC, right? Get Dan Aziz on there. Get O'Hara Davis on there. Why don't you do that? What's the brains trust of Box? If anyone knows, feel free to DM me, because I'm very, very concerned that my license fee is being jizzed up the wall at the moment. Just through some really bad decision making. Meanwhile, Sky are watching this going, oh my God, we're meant to be coming back into boxing next year. What the hell do we do? So Jake Paul's assembled a stable of some of our best female boxers. You can't take that to Sky and go, here's your product. But I imagine once someone like Jake Paul, I don't know if it is Jake, but once someone like that is announced, and I think someone said they have to go with a US promoter because of the lawsuit, and fair enough. But Jake will partner with someone here because he's not going to want to go through that faff of a promoter's license here. So he'll partner with someone here. And who does that leave? It probably leaves Dean White. I would quite like to see that link up, actually, in terms of promoting UK shows. Get Dean White involved. Yeah, Dean White, Dillian, get them involved. Why wouldn't you? But that's going to be the interesting story of 2026. How does Sky come back into boxing? And what does that mean for Boxer? Because right now it's like, well, if you want exposure, you box on Sky or the BBC. Here's my issue. Ben's saying he'd be happy with 3 million views on the BBC, but Channel 5 were getting that with guys we didn't even know. You mean like Hennessy was getting those numbers comfortably? David Hay was doing those numbers on Dave. So my question back is, why are you happy with just 2 mil? It's got to be more than that. Do you know what I mean? And then also, let's send out these certified numbers so guys can go out and get sponsorship. I mean, if I was a boxer, I'd want to sell sponsorship if I'm on the BBC. I'm like, look, I want a solid deal on the BBC. I don't know what channels I'm boxing on the BBC. And I can say, look, sponsors, here's how you get seen. These are the times I wish Beck Connolly was still boxing. I mean, drop another few quid on there and just get the name exposed. But look, just back to this whole thing. At some point, Ben Shom's got to talk with someone who knows about boxing. But I don't know if there's anyone left that he can talk to. So I don't know. This isn't going to end well. Right? This isn't going to end well. And I think what will really do for it is when Sky show up. Because think about this. How many Saturdays are there going to be available if Sky come back? You got Frank and Eddie battling for dates on DAZN. Right? There's 52 weeks in a year. There are those two promoters in the UK. Plus Izzy. Plus the TM guy, I forget his name. I'm sure I've missed out someone else. So how are you going to fit all of those guys into a schedule that really is about 46 weeks? The answer is you can't. And then now you bring Sky in, there are going to be clashes with Sky. So you're basically just halving the audience. You're growing the audience. You're halving your audience between the two platforms. then the BBC as well. Now you're diluting it even further. So actually, Ben hitting 2 mil on a Saturday night is going to get harder. So don't be surprised if you see Wednesday night boxing at Boxer. Don't be surprised. But then have they got the brains trust to make that commercially viable? I don't know. I hear people say all the time, oh, you can't make boxing work on weekdays. I'm like, but people make concerts happen on weekdays. Do you know what I mean? People go out for concerts. Like, people will go and watch, I don't know, Jamiroquai on a Wednesday night. So why can't they watch boxing? The answer is they don't love boxing that much. That's the challenge, to make people fall in love with boxing. I don't know if Boxer are the guys to do that on the BBC. So it would be remiss of me not to speak about the Anthony Joshua situation. We'll try and keep it to boxing as much as possible, because you got to have respect for him as one of the victims, and also for the families of those who passed away. Lats and Sinner. Imagine how heartbreaking it is that you find out your loved one has passed away on Twitter. And I know people will moralize about it and be like, yeah, that's not the way you should do it. But look, we all consume social media for the same kind of car crash entertainment. We can't all pretend to be above it. Yeah, we've created a world in which this gets clicks and views. If it didn't, no one would have posted it. So let's park the pretense. Yeah, all these Shane Watsons and all these other headbangers. Let's park the pretense that there's a moral standard here, because we've all liked and reshared stuff we shouldn't have done. That's just the harsh reality of social media. I'd love there to be privacy, but we can't pick and choose. So I don't quite frankly care. I'll speak about what I want. I will post what I want. I'm a grown man. I'll live and die by the stuff that I do. But this is also just to validate that, unlike other podcasts, I didn't record this 3 weeks ago and just leave it in the chamber and do, here's a recap of 2025. What happened to AJ is heartbreaking, and I'll come on to why. But just briefly, the details we know are he was driving from Lagos to essentially Ogun, right? Or Ibadan. That's kind of where his family's from. I don't know what the drive is. Let's just say it's like driving from London to Oxford. It's not a long drive, right? It's not like miles and miles of driving. But you got to drive out of Lagos. And as someone who's played rugby in Nigeria, let me just be very, very clear about this. You will never have a sensory overload like you will in Lagos. You might have to go somewhere in India, right? Where you can't believe there are that many people in that smaller space. And then where you don't fully understand the language, because there's a mix of Pidgin, Igbo, Yoruba, whatever, right? It's just all noise. And it's loud. And you're like, I have no idea what's going on here. And Nigerians are generally big people. It's just big lumps of people, loud. And you're like, oh my God, what the hell's going on here? Then you got to remember, in Nigeria, they don't have MOTs like we do here. They don't have ANPRs where you can tell if someone's insured or not. There's all this stuff that happens. In many ways, it's lawless, right? And because it's lawless, you have to be from there, because you just develop, someone described it as a Lagos instinct. You just know how to move. You pick up a sense of danger, a sense of trouble. Right? But for normies like you and I, when you go to Nigeria, man, you make sure you got security. So when we went for rugby, we had armed guards. We had soldiers watching us. We were told, you cannot leave this hotel. You can't just go for a walk. And you can't just go for a walk. That's how you go missing. And so you're used to that. When the coach was moving, 2 cars in front, 2 cars at the back, clearing the way, making sure there were no threats. That's how it worked. And it was the first time I'd ever been in Africa and needed security. The first time I'd ever been nervous in Africa. I was like, oh my God, this is mental. I can't imagine Anthony Joshua did not have military-grade security around him. I would have had soldiers driving me. I'd have had soldiers in front clearing the way. And I wouldn't have, then you wouldn't have to speed. But there's a reason why, I've talked to a lot of people who know Lagos well in the last 24 hours or so. And they'll tell you, you can't drive slow in Lagos if you're rich because you might get robbed. Yeah, and no one is above getting robbed in Lagos. Let me tell you, no one is above getting robbed. You will get an AK-47 pushed through the window. It is not London. It's not London. Yeah? And just for context, you have to remember when you're dealing with Africans, and this is from a number of African countries that are quite violent, South Africa being another one. If you notice the black people you find in areas like Bootle, Skelmersdale, wherever you want to pick in the state, like Bexley Heath, the first black people you saw there were Africans, not black Brits. Africans, why? Because there's nothing in the UK that's as scary as Africa. Nothing. That's why you see those old African ladies walking through estates like on the old days, North Peckham estate. They're not scared of that because of where they came from. Joshua's not from that. Joshua's from Watford, Garston. He's not even from Watford. He's from Garston. Do you know what I mean? He's from Garston. Garston or Garston, one of them. That's where he's from. He's worth hundreds of millions of pounds. He's a successful athlete. He's a star. He should have security on a plate for him. I'm upset for him that he didn't, and I'm upset for everyone that he didn't. But I wanted to make this boxing because people asked me, like, do you think he'll box again? And I was like, if what's being said is true and that he was unconscious for 10 minutes in the vehicle and people thought he was dead, I think it would be very, very hard. In the absence of strong expert evidence, it'd be very hard to give him a license again. Like, from a British perspective, I know guys who would deny the license for less. And you are required to submit all of your medical history. And the fact that this is in the public news means that the UK board will ask about it and every other board will ask about it. So there's a chance that he may not be able to box again, which is heartbreaking. The second thing is, would you want to box again? You've lost two people that were very close to you in whatever capacity, in whatever context. You've lost two people that were incredibly close to you. Why would you want to fight again? Like, every camp, you're going to be thinking about them. And the reason I say this is, when I was a teenager, we got into an incident. The whys and the wherefores, I was about 16. The whys and wherefores, aren't really for this podcast. But in summary, I was the only one that had a seatbelt on. And just over a week later, I was burying one of my friends. He didn't have a seatbelt on, and he got thrown out the vehicle. You imagine being 16, that's the first time you've seen a head severed, not completely off, but it's severed. And all that saved me from the consequences were, as we had gone off, our friends were following behind. And they're probably about 40 seconds behind us. And we've gone off. And when they've come, they've seen the carnage. Neighbors have all come out. Well, the residents have come out and rung an ambulance. And obviously they're going to bring the police with it. And they were just smart enough to say you're in the car with us, right? Just say you're in the car with us. Because I'm just there covered in blood because I'm trying to help my friends who are all injured. A couple ran off, but that's for another time. You can go and look at this up in the media as well. It's there. Here's the thing about that. There's not a month I don't get those flashbacks. Not a month I don't remember that feeling of something tells you that this is going to end badly. I can't tell you what it is. I can reverse engineer a story for you now because it's a pod. And whether it's the fact that we'd lost the back end of the car into one corner previously, the road was wet, whatever. You just knew this was going to end badly because there was a lack of control. And I will say this, the thing you remember is going, oh, fuck. That's it. It's oh, fuck, and then there's a and it's so quick that I don't think people realize what speed is. It happens so quick. Yeah, and I think if people are being honest, your eyes close. Anyone that says their eyes up, but your eyes close. Yeah, your eyes close before the impact, so you never see the impact. You hear it, you see the aftermath, and you get up, and the first thing you do is you wiggle your fingers and your toes, like you see in the TV shows. You do that, and then you look, right? The driver and passenger are fucked. There's no driver in the car. You already know this is bad. Passengers kind of half out on the bonnet. And then there's us on the back. I got a seatbelt on, these two haven't. One's banged his head, he's dazed, gets out and runs. Other guy goes, fuck this, gets out and runs. Because they don't want their parents finding out. And then I'm like, if I get out and run, they're gonna know what I look like anyway. So what's the point? They'll know it's me. So I stay and I'm like, get out. And you're like, oh my God. And you don't even know where you are at this point either. And I can just see, one guy's groaning, one guy's dead silent. I'm like, oh, he's fucked. And you don't know what first aid to do, but you're just running around trying to do whatever you can. Your friends then show up. People start coming out, whoa, what happened here? And it's basically, it's carnage. Like the next 3 hours are just utter mayhem. And I say all of that to say, I had to bury a good friend of mine. And of the other people in that vehicle, one was never the same again. Went from being a charismatic, gregarious guy, he was never the same guy again. Never. And then the other two still live with guilt that they ran away. And they're always known as the guys that ran away. Put themselves first. That still lives with me. I can tell you for 2 years after that, I didn't care if I lived or died. That's why we ended up doing a lot of the stuff that we did. I did not give a monkeys if I lived or died. I didn't. I was like, mate, that's as close as you want to get to dying. And so the point I'm trying to make is Joshua's got a bumpy ride ahead, and I wasn't a public figure. I was just a teenager. And I still had time for my brain to grow, mature, and experience life in a way that would hopefully minimize the effects of what had happened in that situation. And I don't know if he's got that. And can you really be in camp and not break down? And can you be in camp? Because look, every so often I'll have those dreams where I'm reliving that moment. And it's so vivid. You're like, oh my God. And you sit up and you're breathing heavy. You're breathing heavy. I mean, you got some sweat on you. You're like, oh, this isn't good. But then you're like, okay, I'm okay. You go back to sleep. And I don't know if he's got all of that to come. I hope he hasn't. But for now, we just got to park all talk of him fighting in Feb, him fighting Fury. You just park all of that and go, mate, get healed and get right. Just get healed and get right. Because bravado will get you some of the way there, but eventually the music stops and reality will hit you. And I do feel for him. Look, it's easy for people to talk about they don't like AJ. They think he's this, they think he's that, he's arrogant. The place we address all of those things is the boxing ring, like we always did. Usyk did it for us twice. Andrew Ruiz did it for us. Daniel Dubois did it for us. That is where our feelings for him are expressed in the ring. This here, we have to be human about and say, listen, I hope the guy pulls through. And I hope there's not a lot of emotional damage. I don't even have to question whether he'll contribute to the families. I have no doubt he'll be a man of integrity in that sense. And those who are close to both men will contribute as well. And that's people being good human beings. What I can say is, if you're one of those people who's like, he deserved it, he's arrogant, he's up his own ass, this will humble him, all that sort of stuff, you got to ask yourself, what kind of human being are you? If you're making jokes about it, you got to ask yourself, what kind of human being are you? Yeah, people moaned about me writing a post where I said Nigeria is not for the faint of heart. You understand why I've said it now. You got to show that country respect. It's like riding on the back of a tiger. You're okay until you fall off. Then you're not okay. So I wish AJ nothing but the best at this point. Like I said, my quarrels with him will always start and end in a boxing ring. All the other stuff, who cares about? I don't know him like that. I know how he boxes. I don't know how he lives his life. This is a boxing podcast. We are boxing people. But that's what we stay focused on. On a human level, I wish him all the best, because no one should have to go through that. No one should have to bury their friends way before their time. You got to look parents in the eye, siblings in the eye, cousins in the eye, and tell them what happened. And half the time they don't believe your story. It's like, no, that's what happened. And they're asking you questions you can't answer. Why wasn't he wearing a seatbelt? I don't know. Why were you all in that car? I don't know. We just were. But it is a reminder. Yeah. Just, and I say this a lot, one of the biggest diseases in society, particularly I think in working class Britain, one of the biggest diseases is the idea of keeping it real. The idea of staying true to your roots. It's stupid. It's stupid. I always felt, and I think I said this about Ricky Hatton, I always felt it was a prison that held people back. I have this debate with people all the time. When people say, if I ever made $1 million, I'd stay exactly where I was. And I'm like, you're stupid. Because all the people around you would leave. Sometimes when you're worth a couple of $100 million, you got to live like you're worth a couple of $100 million. That means it's quite an isolated life. You can't be a man of the people because you're no longer a man of the people. You have wealth that we could never conceive of. And that brings with it pressures and choices we could never conceive of. And so if you're a young boxer listening to this and you're on the path to riches, as soon as you make your first couple of mil, get off the block, get out the hood, go and live in isolation with top-notch security, because you don't need the aggravation. Yeah? Just live your reality and live your truth. I just realized I just talked for 50 minutes. So that's more than enough. Listen, guys, I'm probably not going to do anything before the new year. So however you celebrate the new year, have a fantastic new year. Hopefully 2026 is another strong year for everyone. As always, let's keep the engagement going. Let's keep the dialogue going. We don't always have to agree, but we always have to respect each other. The one thing I will emphasize is there should be a basic level of discussion we can have that is free of emotion. Yeah. And it's just based on what we can agree on in order to understand what we disagree on. And in some cases, we may never agree on those things, and that's okay. But we show the respect by going, well, actually, we agree on most things. And if most people live their life like that, there'd be so little conflict. That's for another time, guys. Take care. Have a great new year. Okay? And we'll speak in 2026.